If money wasn't an issue, okay, I know you like cars.
Oh, yes.
What car would you buy?
It would be a documented and true and real, fully restored or original, but a nice one. 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge in carousel red with hideaway headlights and a 4-speed black interior. It's very specific.
You're like, oh, I know exactly what car I want. If money's not
I
an
could
issue,
hit
I'm
it.
going after it.
Right here. I have it sit on my desk every day. It's right here looking at me. It's my motivation.
Welcome to Critical Thinking Required, hosted by LBW. This podcast is intended for free thinkers, entrepreneurs, and knowledge seekers. Join us as we discuss relevant financial topics, explore with guests their financial journeys, and engage with experts in industries such as space, media and entertainment, real estate, and many more. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to Critical Thinking Required. You're with your host, myself, Tim Bickmore, and I have a wonderful guest today, Gary Grosskopf, our new team member at LBW Wealth Management. And we are so excited to introduce you to Gary. And what we're going to do is we're going to interview him. We're going to ask him a bunch of questions so our listeners and viewers, clients and prospects can get to know the guy behind some of the spreadsheets that we do. So I'm excited about that. Before we jump into your questions, Gary, I got to do a shameless plug. If you like our stuff, if you like this podcast, please share, subscribe, and like to our channels. We're all over the place, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. So please do that. It really helps us out. We're just trying to help educate everybody on finance and introduce Gary. So help us introduce Gary to the world. All right, Gary, I got some questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What nicknames do you have, Gary?
Well, I think since I was in the womb, it was GareBear.
GareBear? I love GareBear.
It's GareBear. Sometimes if I'm bad, it's the boy, but it's GareBear usually.
I feel like I should ask, like, the boy, like, what? Give me an example of when it's like, ooh, Gary was late from coming home.
The boy.
Got it.
Did it again.
That's great. So, okay, so we got the nickname out of the way. What's your full legal name for the record, please?
For the record, it's Gary Frederick Grosskopf.
Got it. Awesome. And where were you born, Gary?
Madison, Wisconsin, right here. Probably about 30 miles north of here.
What's crazy about that is I think you're the only one in the office that's actually born in Madison. You're our first born Madison team member.
I haven't been too far.
You haven't been too far? Well, that's good. I like the Madisonian, right? That's great. For our listeners, I'm just curious. Tell me about some of your favorite pastimes growing up. Like, what did you like to do?
Well, it would either be working on cars with my dad or boating with the family. Those are the two big things that when I think back on it, it was helping wipe down a car and fix things, handing a wrench over or holding the flashlight, or going on boating trips on Lake Michigan, or just spending time at our local lake, Waunakee, which is kind of by Milwaukee.
Awesome. So for boating, are you like a skier? Are you a fisherman? Like, what kind of boating do you guys do?
More of a ride and fly guy, but hopefully soon, maybe I'll try skiing. Still worried about doing the splits.
Got it. No slalom?
No slalom. My little brother's real good at it. So is my next brother older than me. They're both real good at slalom.
Got it. Okay. So
they're fun to watch.
You're thinking about trying it out though here soon, huh?
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. And a question that always people get growing up, right, is if I were to ask you, Gary, what did you want to do when you grow up? What was that? How would you answer that question?
It's not really intense. You'd think maybe like a race car driver or something, but it was actually being an engineer. It was kind of trying to follow the footsteps of my older brothers, and just I liked working on things. I liked mechanical things. So naturally, when people ask me what I want to do, I'd say mechanical engineer. So that's what I try to do, but we'll get to that later.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So tell us where you went to school.
So I went to Madison Area Technical College at first, and I did that with the plan of going to UW-Madison. They offer a really good program where you can take your general education things at MATC for a much lower cost, and then go to UW as a transfer student, guaranteed, as long as you meet the requirements, and then pursue whatever major you find that you want to do when you get to that point.
Okay. And so did you go in as a mechanical engineer? Tell us a little bit about that, or what were you thinking?
I did so all through high school and into college. My plan was to be a mechanical engineer. I took lots of courses, did CAD design, did electronics, did principles of engineering, physics, all with the planning of being a mechanical engineer. And then even into college, I did calculus and calc-based physics, just getting ready to do that.
Okay. And so, I mean, I think this has got to be a question for everybody that's listening right now. How in the world did you get into finance?
So I got to about Calc 2, and I said, I'm just not happy doing this kind of math anymore for this. And I wanted to stay around Madison, and I wasn't seeing there being any opportunities of engineering around me. And at the same time, I was working in a small business, and I started really liking small businesses. And so I decided at that point that I wanted to start getting into small business and pursuing that more, because it was encouraging to me that I could stay close by, I could help people, I could be close to who I'm working with. It just felt more like a family environment. And so that's kind of what made me switch into getting into business and eventually into finance.
Got it. So could you tell us a little bit about like what you actually, so obviously MATC, you got your generals, and then what did you enter into UW with? What did you end up studying at UW?
So UW, when I was talking to my advisor about getting into business, she said, maybe you should try personal finance. And maybe she saw something in me that would be applicable to it. I've never heard of it in my life before. I thought, well, you know what? I'll give it a shot. It's kind of down in the dumps, didn't know exactly where I wanted to go, but it sounded like a good direction. And so transferring to UW in the spring of 2018, I believe, maybe 2017. That's what I got into. And so taking some of those courses, that kind of cemented myself into I think this is what I want to do. And so I pursued it.
Very interesting. And this is a question that we've asked amongst ourselves, as everybody in our office has done a little bit different when it comes to like financial background. I was an econ major. Dan was technically, I think, finance within Whitewater, and Nathaniel was a history major. So I have to ask, do you feel like what you learned at UW, is it relevant to what you're doing now? Which is an interesting question.
Right. And so I guess I would probably be the first person to go to do a degree that is specifically for personal finance and financial planning, which is interesting because it seemed kind of new to me doing it, and it is kind of a fresh major. But it's really helpful to learn those concepts in school, and then you guys know them better than I do. Maybe later I'll be better, but
yes, you
I'm
will.
pretty good now. But going from MATC and doing the engineering, the problem solving piece too, really got me into how personal finance, I could help people solve problems with their finances, which in my background, I've known that a lot of people need help with that. And so it felt good to know that I could help people solve those problems.
Very cool. Yeah. And we were excited to obviously bring you on onto the team. And it's funny because you are the only person that went strictly for financial planning, happened to be doing that exactly, which is great. Is there anything else like through your college career that you feel was relevant to who you are now or what you're doing outside of just going through the personal finance degree?
I think going back to that problem solving, the engineering aspect, that I've always liked to solve problems or fix things. And so being able to understand how to solve problems going through high school and college, that I think that's really applicable to doing stuff here, is helping people solve these complex problems that they have. And before I got here, I didn't think it'd be that complex, but it's really fun to see and help figure out these problems for people.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. So shifting gears just a little bit, I'm just curious. You just you're pretty fresh out of college. And so we're going to give a little bit some advice to some maybe some younger viewers or listeners. So what would you give someone entering into college, studying your major, or wanting to go into this work? Like, what advice would you give those people today, knowing what you kind of know now?
Well, what I would say is that when you're looking at personal finance as a whole, as like a big breadth of a major, there's lots of things you can get into. And I struggled with figuring that out. And I would say that my suggestion would be is to just try things. And internships, try an internship out, see how it goes, see if that's the kind of style of what you like to get into.
Okay. Internships is always a good route. What about this? I really like this question, and I'm curious because I don't know that I've actually asked you this yet. So I'm curious to hear the answer. What do you feel like? What failures in your life, or who you would consider failures in your life, that you feel like you cherish the most?
Yeah, well, it didn't seem like it at the time, but I would say that my most cherished failure is attempting to sell life insurance for a summer. That's my most cherished failure, and I failed at it. Didn't sell a lick of it, but it enabled me to know that I don't want to do that ever again. And so I cherish that because it helped give me a direction when I was kind of lost as to where I wanted to go. And I cherish that a lot.
You found out what you didn't want to do.
Correct.
So it's almost as that kind of tying back to the advice with internships, like do internships because, hey, you may try something that you figure out, yeah, it's not for me. And then you don't have to be stuck into it.
Yeah. And that was a big turning point, is like, finally, I have something to shoot for, something that I don't want to do. It felt good to have that clarity.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. What about, kind of going down this more philosophical route? What about some of the greatest mentors in your life? Who would you consider a great mentor? And it can be anyone. Who would you consider?
Well, I would say as a whole, my dad, especially. I mean, I've been kind of glued to his hip since I was little. Some say I still am, but him and as a whole, my brothers, my older brothers, I grew up with. They're my half brothers, but I never acted like they were. And so just following them, watching them grow up, just kind of help mold me into who I am. We always look back and reflect on little parts of their personalities that reflect on me, and my dad. But yeah, I definitely say my dad and my brothers, they're my biggest role models.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome to hear. I love that. I think I may know this answer to your question, but I'm curious now that you've been in two different positions, right? So life insurance, you're now with us at LBW. What bothers you most about our industry?
Well, so maybe it's a two-part, but I think the salesman-like aspect of a lot of our industry, they feel like, I'm a car guy, they feel like a used car salesman, which I don't like. But it's just that, it's that feeling like you're trying to take advantage of people when you're in a position where you really shouldn't be. And then the other industry thing is making life insurance the prime thing in somebody's plan, which, I mean, it's important sometimes, that's for sure. And I don't want to discount that, but there's a lot of other things that need to be looked at before you get to things like life insurance, because it's not perfect for everybody. And some people call them advisors suggest that it's the first thing you should do. But whether that's for real planning or for commissions,
So up for debate.
Up for debate.
Okay.
I don't
All
think
right.
so.
And so kind of going down that line of like, and obviously you know how we feel about the industry. So I know we align in that way. And I'm curious on this question too, because you've heard me say obviously where I feel there's problems or where it's at, but what do you think is the biggest financial mistake that people make based off of just your education, obviously working with us? Like, what is your opinion on that currently? I'm just out of curiosity.
Currently, I think it is people overextending themselves without knowing the risks and not being ready for it to fall apart. So whether you take on too much debt and not realize what that could mean later, or just ramping up credit cards and not being able to pay them back, thinking that you're going to have the money later to do it and not, because life happens. Not having that emergency cushion when you really need it most. I think just kind of that as a whole, just overextending yourself and not being able to dig yourself back out. I think that's the biggest financial mistake.
I love it, Gary. We talk about it all the time. Positioning. Make sure
Right.
you're positioned for multiple outcomes. What is your greatest source of joy?
I would say as a whole, because I have a lot of interests, and I find myself doing a lot of things, but as a whole, my greatest joy is being able to step back from something and say, I did that, or I fixed that, or that thing's better than when I got to it. It's just being able to take a step back and see something work that you put a lot of time into. That's one of my greatest joys. I get giddy about that stuff.
It's awesome. Okay, so if that's your greatest source of joy, then what has been your greatest accomplishment that you feel that you've done? Just taking that step further.
I mean, it's taken me a while to realize it because it took so long to do. It's just graduate college, and that's pretty base for a lot of people. But it's a big
just deal.
Like
don't you underscore that? That is a big deal.
But being able to step back from it and say, geez, I just did all that. That flew by, but it took a lot of time, and glad I'm done with it. I'm ready to go to the next step. But yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. And I'm being very honest. Don't underscore that. I don't care if it's quote unquote normal for anybody or what. Getting through any education, a higher level, is difficult. And it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work. So I'm really glad that you said that you're proud of it. To be very honest, I'm very proud of me going through college as well. So I like that answer a lot. That's very cool. Okay, here we go. I'm actually curious on what you're going to say with this one, Gary. What is your most favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Favorite place? Okay, so it's kind of specific, but after I graduated high school, my family took us to Maui as a really special treat. And on the east side of the island, there's the road to Hana, which is this really narrow road that goes on the northeastern side. And at the end of it, there's a little park called the Seven Pools that is just beautiful. But my favorite specific place is at the end of that park, there's a waterfall. And there's this big sign that says, don't go past this point, which I didn't listen to. But being able to walk up to that waterfall it was just kind of like a surreal place that you'd feel like you'd only see it in like a movie. But that place right there is, I think, my favorite place I've traveled to.
That is awesome. For some reason, Gary, the way you explain that, I'm thinking like Jurassic Park when they like fly in. Is that
oh yeah, it's a lot less of a stream than that, but it's cool to see. It's really
That's
like
awesome.
it's like looking up 200 feet up and seeing a little trickle of water and being like, yeah, this is paradise. I understand why people come here now, right?
That's awesome. I love it. That is a great story. That's a great that's a great place to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, Maui as a whole, Maui, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. It's just great place, great people. Everybody's nice. Everybody lives in harmony. It's just a cool place.
As you said, it's paradise.
Paradise.
It's awesome. I love it. The whole time I was thinking like, oh yeah, flying in, seeing the fort, that's all I could think about. That is really neat. So this is a two-parter because I know that you like to game. So
a little bit.
What is your favorite board game? Then I want to know what your favorite video game or computer game.
Okay. All right. So my favorite board game. It's between Monopoly and Scrabble. And Monopoly, because I think it's just because it's out of my reach, is because I don't think I've ever played a full game of Monopoly. And so it's kind of out at that distance of like, I really like Monopoly because I want to play it and I want to be able to win and get through an entire game. So it's out there. Scrabble, it's a board game I really like because my aunt is so damn competitive with Scrabble. And it's a bone of contention every weekend of whether we're actually going to play a game of Scrabble. Usually doesn't get to there, but when it does, it's very competitive.
Okay, before we get to your video game, I gotta ask. All right, I love this competitive nature in Scrabble. And I'm super surprised you said Scrabble, because it's an interesting game. Now I don't play Scrabble a lot, but does the dictionary get pulled out in these competitive Scrabble games? Where are we at with the dictionary?
Very vigorously too.
It's
like a threat. Let's get slammed down on the table. It's right here. Here's the word right here. It's like, nah, I've never heard it in my life.
Nope, it's not there. Webster's wrong.
Right.
That's cool. I love Scrabble. That's great. And Monopoly, also a good game. So what about video games? Or computer games? What's your favorite video or computer game?
So like somebody my age, it's between Call of Duty, which I like to play casually with my friends. That's something I've done since middle school, which maybe I shouldn't be in the right age for that, but I did it anyways. And the other one is a franchise called Assassin's Creed. It has a lot of bending between real history and fiction. And I enjoy that kind of delving of thinking about history differently and kind of the power struggles that happen in that game politically, and kind of nerd out on it a little bit, but it's just kind of a fun treat for your brain, I guess, to think about things while also being able to play a game.
So I'm assuming a lot of our listeners are going to ask, and they probably want to ask right now. So were you a fan of the Assassin's Creed movie?
No, I don't think it did it justice.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think there's a lot more intricacies to it that they could have put in, or it would be better in a series maybe.
Got it. Okay. All right. Touche on that. Now this question, it depends on how you answer it, because I hope you answer it with a question, because I'm going to dive into one part of it. But if you had only one meal, Gary, and it was your last meal, paint that picture for me. What's your last meal?
Well, hopefully I have many of these last meals, but I would say a big steak. I don't really care what cut, just as long as there's a lot of meat. Medium to medium rare. I'm thinking about this in my mind right now. I'm getting hungry. And maybe a side of mashed potatoes, maybe a baked potato. And before dinner, to be proper for cocktails. I would have a dry gin martini on the rocks, 3 olives, just a little bit of vermouth.
You nailed the question, Gary, but I'm gonna have to ask, you got to tell the listeners why a specific martini. Give me the background on that.
So the martini is a family drink of ours, brought, I guess, to my family's knowledge by my great grandfather. He was a brakeman on the Chicago Northwestern line that ran between, I believe, Chicago and Minneapolis. And he ran between Chicago and Milwaukee so that he could go home at night. But one night he came back with it and he goes, "Guys, you got to try this. These things, martinis are awesome. These are the coolest." And it's just evolved from there in the Grosskopf family that we drink martinis, me included.
So essentially, you were born drinking martinis.
I was born learning how to make them.
There you go. You're the martini maker for a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. As long as I could figure out how to do it, pour the ice, get everything right. Yeah.
Hey, that's how you get prepped. You got to prep yourself. You got to learn how to make it before you can drink it. I like it. I love that. This is kind of more of, again, back to the sentimental philosophical question. But how do you think a person best helps another?
I would say just being available. I mean, for a lot of things. I mean, and you don't have to be particularly good at anything to be helpful, but just being able to be there for somebody, especially if they're on rough times, if they just need somebody to talk to. I mean, a lot of times people just need somebody to hear something. So just being available to whoever needs it, I think that's how you be the most helpful. Nice
answer, Gary. Nice answer. So I got one more question for you before we wrap it up. We do final thoughts. If money wasn't an issue, okay, it's not an issue. So you can't. I'm gonna push you on it. All right. I know you like cars.
Oh yes.
What car would you buy?
It would be a documented and true and real, fully restored or original, but a nice one. 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge in carousel red with hideaway headlights and a 4-speed black interior. It's very specific, but it's the car.
You just literally hit that out of the park. You're like, oh, I know exactly what car I want. If money's not, I can hit it. Going after it.
I mean, right here. I mean, I have it sit on my desk every day. I mean, it's right here looking at me. It's my motivation.
There you go. I love it. We're going to get that car one day. You're going to get it certified. You're going to make it true, actual Judge. Yeah. 1960.
It'll sit out there in the parking lot. Oh, yeah.
Hey, as long as I get a ride in it, I'm cool.
Oh, yeah. We'll do it.
Nice. All right, Gary. I'm gonna give my final thoughts on this. And then I'm going to have you give your final thoughts because you're our wonderful guest for the day. So my final thoughts on interviewing Gary is it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. I know you've only been on board with us for like the last, 2-3 months now? I think we're on 3 months going on.
It's blown by quick. That's for sure. I think fast. It's been 3 now.
It's been 3. And it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you and obviously to get to know you on a personal level. And I think my favorite thing that you said today, and I always go back, is I absolutely love the martini. I love it. I love the story behind it. I love the tradition behind it. Everything about the martini. And that's why I said, if you don't answer this question right, I'm going to ask about it because I think it's just absolutely wonderful because you're the first person when I asked, what would you do for your last meal? You said, first I'd have a martini. I'm like, wait, what? And you're like, I'm a martini guy. Come on. And like, Gary, you just came out of college and you're drinking martinis. Like that's not normal. You know what I mean? So out of all of that, I love that piece of information about you and your family. And I love that you shared it. So thank you so much for even just joining us. And I can't wait for people to get to know you better because you've been working really hard on the back end. And sometimes you don't get to be in front all the time, but eventually you will, and we'll get you out there. So it's a nice way to have people Gary, you are our guest. You have the last thoughts. Anything you want to add to this wonderful podcast?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for having me, obviously. And thanks to Dan and Nathaniel for including me in here. And thanks for taking the time to get to know me. And I look forward to meeting some of our clients and prospects and anybody who comes by the office. I'm a friendly guy in the background.
There you go. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you, Gary. And thank you for all our listeners and our viewers, allowing us to introduce you to Gary Grosskopf, our wonderful team member. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to start your journey of thinking differently and listening to LBW talk about stuff they love. Until next time.